Welcome to Bite Size Dental Marketing. Today I have Jessica Nunn. Jessica's the CEO and financial consultant and founder of Maven Financial, as well as runs my company and my personal finances as well. And I love her and she's my friend. Jessica, how are you? It's been a minute. What have you been up to?
Thank you for having me here and letting me run your whole life. It's one of
hmm
the most
hmm
fun things I do. um,
I have
we
a,
are.
I don't think, I think I've shared it with you. I have a document just in case I suddenly die.
Hi.
And, uh huh. And the first line, once Emily gets settled in, is to call Jessica.
Good.
It's like literally like once you've processed this, call Jessica.
I feel
That's
like
the.
I might be on that list for a couple of people, which,
hmm
man, is that the call that I want to take? I don't know. I got to think about that one.
I hope that Andre calls you first, so you don't hear it from Emily. But yeah,
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
someone's
Let's make
calling
that
you.
happen.
Someone's calling you first. Yeah.
Let's make that happen.
hmm
Well, hopefully not,
hmm
right? Okay, so here's what we got going on. We have finally finished what we're calling our benchmarking study. So, we work with a lot of dental offices, right? We have access to all their financial information. So, why not compile them so that we can see as a whole how is our portfolio comparing?
hmm
How are they performing? What happened last year? How is that different than what's happening this year? What are we seeing? Because really, we have enough clients and enough information that we can be benchmarking not only each client against our portfolio, but also like against the industry. What are we seeing with our clients? What are the
Right.
challenges? How are those challenges showing up in their financials? So, you want to jump in?
Let's do it.
Let's jump in. Okay, so last year, 2022, think about 2022. What was going on in 2022? We couldn't find people and we couldn't get, for a lot of the year, the supplies that we needed, right? We were over ordering. We were
hmm
kind of still had a little PTSD from 2020 and 2021 where we were lucky to get our hands on some gloves. So, because of that, I will say that in 2022, our payroll on average for our practices combined was about 30% of our revenue. So of our collections. Typically,
Okay.
we like this to be more like 25%. So we're seeing it show up in the numbers
hmm
that folks were having a hard time finding people. Maybe they were using more contract labor, which is more expensive than just having someone on your team. But then also we had to pay people a little bit more. So we're seeing
Yeah.
that for sure show up in the numbers. And I don't love that on average clients' payroll was about 30%, but it's the reality. These numbers aren't lying. Secondly, our lab and supplies last year were about 14%, and we were seeing a lot of spend in the supply area. So typically, supplies are about 6% of a dental practice, but last year we were seeing a lot of eights, nines,
Mm.
because I think folks were still like, if they could get their hands on it, they were buying it, and this just resulted in an overspend. So if we
Yeah.
think about payroll was 30%, lab and supplies was 14%, then those two costs added up was 44% of our collections out the door, right? Before we even paid our rent, our utilities,
Yeah.
any of our other bills. And when I say payroll, I'm referring to team payroll only. No doctors are in that number. So it's literally just the team payroll. So then what about the other costs of the practice? So on average for our clients, they spend about 3% on marketing.
hmm
So I mean, we typically say, 4 to 5%, just depending on where you are in your practice. So this might have been a little bit low and maybe folks I think it's two things. One, some of our practices are fully in network with insurance. And when they are, they get new patients just by being on a list. So they're not
Right.
potentially spending as much as an out of office or a fee for service, out of network fee for service practice. I mean, do you guys feel like folks spent about the same last year as typical?
We're definitely seeing it tighten last year. I think some of it was, just fear of the economy, which paradoxically, um, a marketing person would tell you that when you get into a tightening, you should bump your marketing spend. No one does, but that's fine. We've definitely had some folks come back to us and ask, can I lower my marketing budget and things like that, and we've said okay. And we're not just doing the same work for less. I mean, we're typically cutting search, Google search, or something that may be a little more expensive channel. But no, we've seen some tightening. Now, I will say that was last year. This year, we've seen folks try to ramp up because they're not getting the patient quality they want. So we've had a pretty good health of people wanting to spend more money this year. But last year certainly was a tightening.
Well, and we'll look at 2023 in a bit and we'll see if that shakes out in the numbers for us as well.
Hmm.
So, rent is also obviously one of the largest costs of a dental practice. And on average, rent for our clients was about 4.4% last year, which is great.
Mm.
We like to see about 5. So, on average, our clients are spending a little bit less on rent than some of the others. So, this means that their fixed expenses, right, which is like we say fixed expenses are the costs that don't care how many patients you show up.
Yeah.
Rent, utilities, right? Your computer costs. Your computer costs are not going to change if you have one patient or 30 patients that day. It is what it is, right? So these fixed costs were about 17% last year. So in total, our our total expenses, let me add those up here, were about 54, sorry, 64%, right? So when people talk about what's my overhead, where should my overhead be? What we look at in terms of overhead is P&L costs, so not loan payments, and also not doctor salary. Because if you
Right.
think about it, an owner doctor kind of pays themselves however they want, so it's not an apples to apples comparison.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
take out all doctor payroll, I don't include that, and I don't include loans either. So if we look at overhead for just team payroll and then kind of the ongoing costs of the practice, on average, our clients last year were about 64%. So that leaves
Nice.
36% available to pay for their own salaries, their own perks, retirement, and loans. Typically, in a dental office, we like to see that closer to 40%. So I would say then
Hmm.
our practices last year were less profitable than what we like to see. So that's you know not my favorite thing to say. But let's look at this year.
22 was a rough year for us
It
as an
was.
agency too.
I feel that there were a lot of
Hmm.
challenges, right?
There was, and I think just culturally, people were not. We were still having some fatigue. Vacations were a huge thing for through the summer, and I think just expenses across the board were higher, and we struggled a little bit with our human resources side of the business, and yeah, I mean even marketing advertising went up. The cost of display advertising went up. Yeah, last year.
Well, for our practices, we're seeing, for sure 2022 was kind of a reset, I would say. A year of like,
Hmm.
other than the challenges of finding the team, I think we had to also retrain the patients. Like you and I have talked about, cancellations were through the roof, right? So if you think about it, if our clients or patients are canceling out of our schedule, then our production isn't as high as what we would typically see, right? If we're
Yep.
short a dental assistant and a hygienist, then our production isn't as high as what we would normally see. So what we're seeing happened last year compared to this year is that the costs aren't less, right? We didn't go in and bargain with our team and now we're paying everyone less salaries. We didn't reduce our rent. We didn't reduce our advertising. Like our costs are the same, if not more. But some of those challenges have been overcome
Hmm.
so that our production and our collections are higher. So on average last year, our production per patient, hold on, let me pull it up, was $450. On average, our production for every patient that came into each of our practices was $450. This year, it's $470. So
Nice.
if we have more patient visits and we're producing more on patients because we're able to get them to accept treatment, we're able to help them figure out how to pay for it, then even though our costs might be the same in terms of dollars, in terms of percentages, they are better. So now we're seeing our lab and supplies 13% instead of that 14%. We're cutting a whole percentage points off that. It's not happening in the lab. It's happening with the supplies. In almost every practice in our meetings, I'm like, what are you just not paying your bills? Like, why are our supplies so much less than they were this time last year? And I feel like we've realized, okay, these things aren't in short supply anymore. Like if I need to get stuff, I can get it. I can
Hmm.
calm down
Hmm.
on the ordering of it. And maybe also they have a little bit in their backlog, right? Because all the
Yeah.
stuff that we bought last year, we spent too much. Now we're using that. But I've seen dental supplies lower than I've ever seen them in my career this year. And it's probably not that the prices have come down, right? We've just gotten smarter about ordering. Same with payroll.
Hmm.
Payroll has come down. Thank goodness. We're seeing less than 30% now, which I'd still like it to be closer to that 25, percent. And I think let's tighten some of these things with regards to cancellations. Let's continue to make sure we're fully staffed up. Um, for folks that are getting out of network, make that change happen, and that will help us see our staffing costs come back to a more normal amount. But it is good to see that it's coming down as a percentage of income so far.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's turnover based. I know that when we see offices turn over, I mean, there's some amount you pay out, when they leave. There's the retraining and the
True.
all the thing that goes along. But I would agree, staff seems more stable this year than ever, and we know that because typically when office turns over the front desk, they'll reach out to us and say, "Hey, can you listen to phone calls of the new person?" And we've had a lot less of that, which is always nice.
I think, teams are kind of getting settled in. Maybe a lot of the movement has
Mhm.
shifted. We still have a lot of offices that are short. Like if I somehow was, able to find hygienists and place hygienists, I'd be another business that'd be worth having because I feel like
It
everyone needs another
it
hygienist,
would definitely be worth having.
right? I wish I could
Hmm
just go print some
I
or something.
hygienists are the most in demand position that there has to be in dental right now.
I would agree with that. So,
Maybe associates are still.
yeah, that's always going to be a thing. Marketing folks are spending a little bit more this year, which is interesting because we talked about income is rising. So for the percentage to come up as well, that's actually a higher dollar spend. So what you're
Mhm.
saying is ringing true in our numbers too, that people are trying to get maybe a different kind of patient in the door and they're willing to spend money for that. The fixed costs
Yeah.
are coming down as a percentage, and that's likely again a function of the revenue increasing. So overall, our overhead this year is about 61%. So it's come down. So our
Okay.
practices as a whole are more profitable year to date 2023 than they are 2022. So that's a good sign. And again, a lot of that is the production increasing. A lot of our practices are just having great months. So we look, every month
hmm
we review the financials with them and we're like, well, you hit your goal. Or I have one that I said, why do I even goal for you? Why am I setting these goals? Because you're blowing it out of the water every single month. I'm like, what am I even doing anymore? Right? Makes you feel not
hmm
great at your job when they're surpassing their goal by hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we'll take it. Better than the other way.
Oh my gosh, that'd be the best problem I'd ever have. I would
Yeah.
celebrate that problem with you.
I'm like, stop proving me wrong, but if you have to, I guess it's okay. What's cool is when we first started doing this, we just do CFO services. So we're not preparing tax returns, we're not preparing financial statements. People would call and say, "Oh, like you're what is this?" Like I'd
hmm
invented this thing that we're doing. What do you mean you don't do tax returns or financials? Like what are you
hmm
doing then? And now people call and they say, "Hey, we're happy with our CPA, we're happy with our tax return and our financial statements. Now we need this CFO role." So that's kind of cool to see. Okay, it's a thing and people know about it now. I'm not just like teaching everyone when they get on the phone what a CFO does for your business. So that's been good to see.
No, I've said I think the last time you were on that benchmarking to me is the most impactful thing that you do. I mean, I like the other things that occur, but the comfort knowing what's happening in the industry, the comfort that you're seeing these correlations in other clients brings me comfort because I will say, even though I feel plugged in, it feels myopic sometimes. If I'm growing or if I'm having a good year, is the market having a good year? Am I killing it? It's just so comforting to have that underlying data that we can benchmark and see how everyone else is doing. So when you, I think a few years ago, you sent out a survey asking what the most, maybe it was a informal
Oh yeah,
email or
yeah.
something about
I
what the
remember
most
this.
valuable thing we do. And mine was benchmarking. You should do that again.
Well, I was going to say to know, like, when you're having a problem like cancellations or staffing, hey, you're not alone in this. This is an industry
hmm
wide thing. This isn't a you problem. This is an everybody problem.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for your time. And as always, it's such a pleasure. And that was your bite of dental marketing.
Yes, thank you.